But you wait until that tolerance is gone. When the Anglo-Saxon no longer wishes to tolerate the rape, robbing and extortion and theft of our identity. What's going to happen
from Germany or from Britain? They were originally the Saxons or Angles from Germany.
The Anglo-Saxons are a mix of the Celts and the Saxons, all northern Western European white race people. We have no genetic difference in our composition. Europeans are all one brotherhood. Before that, there wasn't any black, browns or Asians or anything else living in Britain. In fact, in the 1950s, it was less than 0.3% in Britain were foreign.
Syria, so what was Europe then? But even the definition, even the concept of Europe, Europa, Europea, was different 1,000 years ago. The Romans included Northern Africa, they included parts of Syria. So there's been a heritage of change. The terms they're using, what is Europe, what is Britain, all this is constantly changed. And human beings have been moving.
At all. Britain has been known as Britain and Great Britain since the Romans, right?
Britons.
Okay, we could say the same, right? So your home doesn't exist. It's been populated by lots of people. There's no such thing as Asians or Pakistanis, and it'd be perfectly fine if we were to wipe you out. Let's take your lands, let's take your identity, let's rewrite your history so that you're not part of it and make you not exist. You know why? Because nations and people are so interchangeable that it doesn't matter if we genocide an entire peoples, because we're all the same, right?
Katie Fannin, Bubba Kate versus the state.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
This portion of CBS This Morning sponsored by Pfizer.
Good Morning America is brought to you by Pfizer.
CBS Health Watch sponsored by Pfizer.
Anderson Cooper 360. Brought to you by Pfizer.
ABC News Nightline. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Making a difference. Brought to you by Pfizer.
CNN Tonight. Brought to you by Pfizer. Early Start. Brought to you by Pfizer. Friday night on Aaron Burnett Out Front. Brought to you by Pfizer.
This Week with George Stephanopoulos is brought to you by Pfizer.
Today's countdown to the royal wedding is brought to you by Pfizer.
And now a CBS Sports Update brought to you by Pfizer.
Meet the Press Data Download brought to you by Pfizer.
This portion of CBS This Morning sponsored by Pfizer.
On how to find the hidden sugars in the American family diet. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Yeah, I would say, look, I can speak specifically from an ADL perspective. ADL Center for Technology and Society has done significant studies in the responsiveness of tech platforms, and we've actually graded them on their responsiveness of anti-Semitism, Holocaust denial, other forms of hate. You know, you have a platform like Meta that just gutted its entire fact-checking department, and they're moving away from it. And so what we need to do is we need to apply pressure in a real significant way on tech platforms that they have a responsibility, that they have a absolute responsibility to check and remove hateful speech that is insightful, not insightful with an S, but insightful with a C. Right? And so we need to do that. Congress, there's a role for federal regulators to play. And there's also a role that states can even play too. And we've seen that in places like California and others. You hold them accountable. Like right now, tech platforms are not accountable for having misinformation. Was it Section 230 of the National Communications Act, or the Federal Communications Act? Congress needs to amend Section 230, which provides immunity to tech platforms right now for what happens. Right? If you listen to what Mark Zuckerberg said, for example, when he testified before Congress, he was like, listen, if you called 20 years ago or 30 years ago, if you called somebody to issue a bomb threat, you didn't sue the bells. They were just the platform through which, the conduit through which, or the platform through which, the person made the threat. I'm not responsible for the threat, right? These tech platforms are not guaranteed under the Constitution. They're just not. They're private companies. They can use their user agreements to kick people off, to deplatform. They did. And then we've seen in the last few years when Elon Musk bought X, right, the deplatforming of people. You saw Facebook and Meta that changed their policies, right, the deplatforming of the replatforming, of people, right? So Congress could amend that act and actually hold tech platforms accountable. And I guarantee you, look what's happening right now on college campuses. Universities are being held accountable for the anti-Semitism on campus, and what are they doing? They're changing. Accountability is a tool that can be incredibly effective in changing behavior. But right now, they're not accountable. Anybody else?
I did a deep dive study of how the Federal Reserve was founded and why it's one of the most corrupt entities that still operates within our country, and I'd like to detail you what I found. Now, in 2022, I believe it was, that I was at a happy hour, and if you've never been to a real estate agent happy hour, you've never been to one of the more awkward things you've ever been to, because everyone's in there with a little bit of commission breath. They're in there, how can I grow my sphere, my network, to make a little bit money and grow my career a little bit? And I'm not good at those things. I'm very bad at walking into a room with people that don't know me, I don't know them, and we're all just supposed to just kind of get along. I'm not good at it. So naturally, I found the biggest circle, biggest little social circle that already had a conversation going, and in late 2022 was interest rates. Interest rates were about to go up. And I remember when one person said, it's crazy the Federal Reserve is not a government entity. And I remember thinking to myself, because I didn't say anything, it's like, no, it's not. That's not true. It's a government entity. It's got the word federal in it. It's got to be and it's not. It's a hybrid at best. But it was a private entity founded in 1913 on a past Senate vote of 43 to 25, and 27 senators and congressmen were actually absent for that vote. In fact, the Federal Reserve Act wasn't even named that when it was originally put into place. It was originally called the Aldrich Plan, then shifted to the, where is it? I lost it. It was turned into the Federal, oh man, I'm losing it. We'll get back to that. Oh, the Federal Reserve Act. It's turned into the Federal Reserve Act. Stick with me. In 1913, on December 23rd, during Christmas recess, the Federal Reserve Act was passed. That's a yellow flag. That's weird. Let's look at who founded it. The people that founded it went by the name of Nelson Aldrich, Paul Wahlberg, A. Piot Andrew, Frank Vanderlip, Charles Norton, Ben Strong, and Henry Davidson. Who are these people? Henry Davidson was a senior partner at J.P. Morgan. Ben Strong would go on to head the New York Federal Reserve. Charles Norton was the first national bank leader. That was a J.P. Morgan bank. Frank Vanderlip was the National Citibank president. That was a Rockefeller bank. A. Piot Andrew was the Secretary of the Treasury. Why was he there? Oh, by the way, this was a secret meeting. I forgot to mention that. Nelson Aldrich was as well a senator and the father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller, and Paul Wahlberg was the only central banker at the meeting, and he was a German central bank. He helped create the Reichsbank, the German central bank. And now they're in a room in 1910, secretly. How secretly? These men got together to form the central bank that we know in our country today. They did so secretly at a resort in Georgia, the Jekyll Island Resort, still a resort to this day. I hear it's beautiful. Who owned the resort? It was J.P. Morgan. So J.P. Morgan sets up a room for all these gentlemen to meet secretly. How secretly? They lied to their wives and family, said they were going on a duck hunting trip. They got in a private cab on the back of a train under fake names, and then they got there, got on a boat, got across to the resort, stayed there for about 6 days, and concocted up what they inevitably called the Nelson Aldrich Plan, and Nelson Aldrich claimed he was the one that came up with all the ideas. Another yellow flag. He would then put it in front of the committee, the lawmakers, and they would say, no, this is very bad. And they would ultimately deny it. It got denied, and then inevitably within the next year and a half, they had something called the Pujo Committee come up. This was in 1912, and the Pujo Committee actually investigated into whether or not this Federal Reserve thing was just a big money trust. Is this just a bunch of big money trying to just get a hold of all the rest of the money? And guess what they found? They found that there are 180 corporations in America that owned about 11.7% of the entire economy, and at that time, that's equal to about $25 trillion worth of economy that they had under their control, and it was 3 bankers: J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, Rothschild Bank. So you get what I'm saying here. They investigated into whether or not these people running the game actually had a monopoly on the country, and they said, yeah, they kind of do. And we had a meeting just a year and a half prior with 26% of the world's wealth at a secret location under the guise of nicknames that they lied to their family about to put together this act that Nelson Aldrich lied, a public service member, also the Secretary of Treasury Reserve, so 2 public service members, lied to get this in front. They have a committee meeting. They say it's a money trust, so you may think, oh, it dies right there. They rebranded it. So they removed what was the name at the time, the National Reserve Association, originally the Nelson Aldrich Plan, replaced it with the Federal Reserve Act, decided instead of just having one central bank, we'll have 12 regional banks that all kind of answer to the main one. And the board members wouldn't just be appointed from banks, the president would appoint them. That was where they met in the middle. And then it was met with a ton of backlash, to the point where some conspiracy theorists even look to the fact that the Titanic sinking had 3 of the biggest political pundits against this bill on it. J.P. Morgan financed the boat, and he wasn't on it. Just a weird thing. So, again, yellow flag. So this was the blueprint that set up, and via the Glass-Owen bill, they would inevitably pass the Federal Reserve during Christmas recess, December 23rd, at a 43-27 vote with 27 lawmakers not present, to create what we know today as a central bank. And our central bank is concocted of 7 board of governors going on 14-year terms, nominated by the president, confirmed by the Senate. And these are the same people that usually come from hedge funds. They come from running banks, and even the people at the initial meeting. Because there's some people who say, oh, well, Zach, the meeting that happened at Jekyll Island didn't actually have to do with the Federal Reserve because it happened 3 years later. Let's look at the people who are on it again. Ben Strong ended up being appointed by Woodrow Wilson as the head of the New York Federal Reserve of 1914. That's number 1. Number 2, we have the German fellow, Paul Walberg. Guess who became the leader, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, the Jerome Powell of the time, for the first Federal Reserve appointed by Woodrow Wilson? It was that guy. So we have all of this influence from that meeting, the J.P. Morgan Rockefeller influence from that meeting. In fact, many people have done studies to find that 26% of the nation's wealth was in that room. And that's the same Federal Reserve with really no changes to their mandates, really no changes to their powers, no changes to the levers they have at their disposal to alter our monetary policy, to alter our money flow, because they have 2. They can adjust our Fed rate, which adjusts the rates for you and I, mortgages, cars, and all those based off investor sentiment. We're not going to go into a whole thing about that. And money flow, they can take money out, they can add money in via the selling and buying of bonds. We're not going to get too complicated with it. All I'm saying is we have an entity that's in place that was designed to be private, that was designed to be something that was somewhat of a solution, a caveat, a go-between, a back and forth, a mom and dad of the economy to say, okay, not everything can be government. We need to have some private in here to come in and mix in and keep things fair. But can I read you what Woodrow Wilson said? The very man who campaigned for the Federal Reserve Act, and by the way, the same people who were in that meeting, J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, Rothschild, also financed Woodrow Wilson's campaign efforts, so they got him into office. He then pushed for this, then appointed people that were at that meeting to lead it for the New York and the federal side, so basically the entirety of the leadership. And by the time Woodrow Wilson got out of office, he had this to say. This is a quote from Woodrow Wilson from 1918. By the way, nobody from that Jekyll meeting would admit that it happened until 1923, and I think only 2 inevitably actually admitted it on paper. But it took over a decade for them to admit it even happened. This was a quote from Woodrow Wilson. Some debate whether this was 1918 or 1920. Regardless, it's from Woodrow Wilson. He says, "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is now controlled by a few wealthy men. We have come to be one of the most controlled and dominated governments in the entire world, no longer a government of free opinion and democracy, but a democracy formed and owned by the opinion and duress of a small group of financially dominant men." The Jekyll meeting of 1910 led to the Federal Reserve of 1913. And today, as we await in the next 2 weeks the next Federal Reserve meeting, we will hear Jerome Powell get up and ignore the wealth gap, ignore the housing affordability crisis, and ignore all items that don't stem from unemployment or inflation. And we know very, very, very bluntly speaking, that the unemployment numbers we're getting are lagged and are false, and that the inflation numbers we're getting are ignoring the fact that everything's inflated for the last 5 years, and now they're just getting it under control. It's been 5 years. Home prices are up 47%, power's up over 60%, cars off the lot for a used car are now $512 minimum, and that's not including your $200 a month in car insurance. The Federal Reserve has caused a lot of the problems that we sit in today. It was originally put in to be a counterbalance to the government, but all it's done is taken the government's job out of their hands to feed the wealthy, feed the elite, all the way at the top of their money, and secretly, covertly, and I guess with policy and reason, sift money away from the middle class. It was created for wealth, it funnels wealth, and it's doing that today for wealth. And if you think anything different, that's fine, but I stand with Ron Paul, who had a great book. And the Fed.
3, 2, 1, ignition. Right away, Houston. Regs are good. Ag thought. Pitch over.
Look at how many members of Congress outperformed him, and not by 5%, not by 6 or 7 or 10, by 40, 50, 60, 70, up to 149% annual returns. Warren Buffett has been doing this for 60 years. He's never had 149% year. He's never had 105%. He's never. And meanwhile, we have half a dozen members of Congress buying stocks on their cell phones sporadically, outperforming the best year in the history of the best investor who's ever lived. It's like, we don't need Murder, She Wrote to crack this thing open. Clearly, they are cheating this thing.
What if only black people voted? Well, everywhere would be Democrat. What if only Jewish people voted? Everywhere would be Democrat. What if only Hispanic people voted? Everywhere would be Democrat. What if only Asian people voted? Everywhere would be Democrat. What if only women voted? Everywhere would be Democrat. What if only men voted? Everywhere is red. Everywhere is Republican. What if only white people voted? Everywhere is Republican. There's a racial aspect to this that they recognize, that they understand, that the only group concerned about limiting government power are white males. That's why they're being targeted. That's why we are being targeted. They'll write articles with that headline, demographics are our destiny. Do we even need an undercover video of them saying this? Joe Biden gives speeches where this is the point. They have the American people, and specifically white people, so kowtowed and beaten down that they can literally look you in the eye and go, we're replacing you. We hate you and your race because you stand up to us. And we're dismantling you and replacing you with people that are more amenable to our exploitation, more willing to allow us a free hand in governance, who don't give a damn about this country or its founding principles. And white people sitting there going, I love diversity though. No, but I'm not a bad one. I'm one of the good whites. Will you be nice to me? And they're just like, no, we don't care if you're good or not. And we see your kindness as weakness. And the more you give us, the more we want. The more you try to help us, the more demands we make. And this is never going to end. Never going to end. Do we realize this? Can we recognize basic, obvious patterns that repeat like a fractal pattern? Day over day, week over week, year over year, decade over decade, century over century. It's the same thing over and over. When are we going to break the cycle?
welcome to the People's Table. I am your host, Jake Ryan. This is my first show. I'm, a little nervous, obviously, but I shouldn't be because no one's watching. I'm excited. This is something I should have done a long time ago. I've been partaking in politics for a long time, been pretty active on social media. So, excited to have this all set up and, rearing and ready to go and starting to do this consistently, kicking off today. Really want to get into a little reminder of what this administration was promising that they were going to fulfill. I think that it's more relevant now than ever because this is what got people so excited for the Trump admin, and anyone who's paying attention and has an IQ over 12 sees that this entire thing's been a complete sham, from practically all of Trump's money being made off of a rug pull from Trump coin, to the Epstein files debacle and the evolution of the story from running on releasing it to saying that it's absolutely ludicrous, we're still talking about it, there's nothing in the files, there's nothing there, to what's recently been released, and so much more. So jumping right into it, let's go check out these old videos of Agenda 47. And I'm just going to be jumping in here in between. We got to tweak out this, went full screen on me. Oops. As you can tell, still getting a little used to the setup here. Almost there, folks. Come on. What a pain. There we go. Let's do a little bigger. Let's just hit play and get it going.
There is no more dire threat to the American way of life than the corruption and weaponization of our justice system, and it's happening all around us. If we cannot restore the fair and impartial rule of law, we will not be a free country. As president, it will be my personal mission to restore the scales of justice in America. We will have fairness and equality under the law.
And these are all really short videos, so I'm just going to be interjecting as I see fit.
And to that end, I will appoint U.S. attorneys who will be the polar opposite of the Soros district attorneys and others that are being appointed throughout the United States. Very unfair to our population, very unfair to our country. They will be the 100...
He's saying all the right things, but practically none of this has occurred. The only thing that he's done that I know of, at least relating to judges, has been changing what their authority is as far as any sort of federal judge having the ability to impede executive orders, which is ludicrous to even have in the first place, because these low-level federal judges can thwart an executive order from the highest level of the most elite branch of office. It's something that makes no sense, especially finding out, I don't remember the exact states, but there's about 7 states where you don't even need to have passed the bar in order to become a judge, which is a much more morally hierarchical position than just being a lawyer on its own. And you need to be more than just savvy, you need to be top of the line. You need to be one of the best lawyers in order to become a judge. That's how it should be. Obviously, now we're getting all of these political judges due to this absurd structure.
Most ferocious legal warriors against crime and communist corruption that this country has ever seen. As we completely overhaul the Federal Department of Justice and FBI, we will also launch sweeping civil...
Yeah, there's been absolutely minimal personnel shift in the FBI.
Rights investigations into Marxist local district attorneys. And that's what we have. They're Marxists in many cases. By refusing...
He already has the old person drawl where it sounds like they have cotton mouth at this point, and that was one of my major concerns coming into this presidency, plus obviously all of his deep ties to Israel and Israeli and Jewish donors and things of the sort. But my big concern, one of them, was his age, and he was slurring before. And I mean, just look at him here. Obviously, he's got the makeup all done and is looking to the nines, but he has already gotten so much older in this administration. And you watch older videos of Trump, and you're like, it's a completely different person, because that's what happens when you get older. Your cognitive ability just declines. You're getting old. That's what happens. You can't replace your your printer ink is running out, you know.
Using to charge countless crimes. These Soros prosecutors appear to be engaging in selective enforcement based on illegal racial discrimination. In Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and every other city where these maniacs have taken over, the DA's offices should face federal subpoenas of their staff, their emails, and their records to determine whether they have blatantly violated federal civil rights law.
That'd be nice.
As part of this effort, there should be a federal inquiry into the Soros prosecutor in Austin, Texas, who charged a veteran with murder for defending himself against a threat by a heavily armed member of a radical left mob.
That hasn't gotten any better. There's been already so many instances during this administration where there's been massive persecution of anyone, you know, defending themselves against, you know, these sort of leftist groups. It's absurd.
Also ordered the Department of Justice to establish a task force on protecting the right to self-defense, which is under siege nationwide. In addition, we will have a complete investigation into the use of police state tactics by federal authorities to arrest conservatives and Christians. We will find out who ordered it, and we will hold them totally accountable. There is much more that we must do. We have to confront this radicalized law in schools. You take a look at what they've done to our schools, our beautiful schools. We have to reform the far-left bar associations and stop the purge of conservative lawyers from major law firms. I will do whatever it takes to save our legal system among the greatest achievements of Western civilization from the Marxist barbarians who seek to destroy it. And we will do that. We will save it. Thank you very much.
So I looked it up because I just had to see if he actually did end up creating any sort of task force. You can't, because it doesn't make sense. You have to put on sanctions or impose, you know, executive orders in order to do so, to threaten penalties to members of the ICC, which is the only thing you can really do to strengthen self-defense cases. But it's not a formally recognized task force, so there's something that hasn't really happened. He did issue that executive order imposing those sanctions if court-pursued prosecutions involving U.S. citizens or allies like Israel. So there's the kicker we had to add there. And as far as tackling what's going on in schools, I mean, I've seen nothing there. You look at the entirety of the institutions, and they're just purely leftist from pre-K to PhDs. So, you know, they've completely captured those institutions, which is a real shame. It's, as someone who's gone through it, it's certainly not education. It's complete indoctrination. They don't teach you how to think. They teach you what to think. And the people who are teaching you that are pseudo intellectuals. They're really not the sharpest tools in the shed, and they're, you know, those who can't do teach. There's a reason why there's an adage, and that's really that. You know, there's definitely ways that we can properly infiltrate these institutions and make it more balanced. It's certainly something difficult to do, especially when you're requiring 4-year degrees in order to, you know, become a teacher, which you get a 4-year degree for a minimal salary. It doesn't really add up, you know. And then a lot of these people who come out of these leftist institutions, it's kind of like a factory line. They end up being, you know, left themselves. You hear all these stories about parents sending their kids to college and they come back 6 months later, and, you know, your sweet daughter is now screaming about the patriarchy and how, you know, everyone's kind of gay or whatever it is they're trying to say. So, all right, video 1 down. Ugh, this is a drag so far.
Cutting wasteful and job-killing regulations was a key part of my America First economic agenda that built the greatest economy in the history of the world. As I work to quickly save America from Joe Biden's economic disaster, that's what it is. One of the great economic disasters.
1.25, so he talks like a
I will restore my famously successful executive order requiring that for every one new regulation, 2 old regulations must be eliminated, and I will ask Congress to make it permanent. We will.
Okay, I'm calling cap on that one. part of this is just going to be double checking things together. Yeah, that's complete crap, I bet. Wow. Okay, so we did institute that rule. Let's see how. In 2017, signed an exec order requiring that for every new federal regulation issued, at least 2 existing have to be eliminated. Commonly called the 2-for-1 rule. Yeah, it's not active today. Likely to return if he regains. Okay, so this is outdated. I usually double check these afterwards as well. Okay, so he did, let's see. Must identify existing rules to repeal, but the old 2-for-1 rule itself was replaced with a more aggressive 10-for-1 framework rather than reinstated as before. Okay, well, I haven't really heard anything coming from this. I'm pretty surprised that it actually came to fruition to a degree. I just, that's something I want to look more into for sure, but boring. Let's keep going.
And implement a regulatory budget, putting a hard cap on the cost of regulations to the U.S. economy. Instead of growing the size and scope of the federal government every single year.
He increased the deficit by, what was it, $4 trillion?
We've been doing that. We will shrink it every year with aggressive cost reduction targets for each federal department. In addition, we will require that all agencies' regulatory guidance must be posted publicly in a central database or else be rendered null and void. And many of them will in fact be null and void. This will effectively repeal a mountain of stealth regulations and threats that rogue bureaucrats have imposed without proper oversight. And I will sign a law to ban bureaucrats from taking any enforcement action based on informal guidance alone. For example, never again will bureaucrats be allowed to bully and pressure banks to choke off their financially deplatformed, politically disfavored industries. We're not going to let that happen. Next, I will bring the independent regulatory agencies such as the FCC.
Him saying he's not going to let things like that happen, obviously a lot of persecution occurred to him. I don't think that's something he can fully implement, because this administration doesn't know how to wield the law even when they had every single, branch of government under Republican control, and it's just one of the cruxes of the Republican Party. They do not know how to wield their power. They know how to make a show of it, and all it does is end up riling the left, who actually knows how to throw that weight around.
And the FTC back under presidential authority as the Constitution demands. These agencies do not get to become a fourth branch of government, issuing rules and edicts all by themselves, and that's what
we'll talk about the fifth branch a little later.
They've been doing. I will require that they submit any regulations they're considering for White House review. In addition, we will create an ultra-streamlined federal regulatory framework specifically for freedom cities, allowing them to be true frontiers for the return of U.S. manufacturing, the invention of new industries, the rebirth of economic opportunity, and safe and affordable living. Finally, I will require every federal employee to pass a new civil service test demonstrating an understanding of our constitutional limited government. This will include command of due process rights, equal protection, free speech, religious liberty, federalism, the Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable search and seizure. I know all about that at Mar-a-Lago, don't I? And all other constitutional limits on federal power. We will put unelected bureaucrats back in their place, liberate the U.S. economy, and attract millions of jobs and trillions of dollars to our shores. Thank you very much.
It's really a shame. I love who he could have been, Exit? Okay. Oh no, we gotta scroll down. Gotta open that in a new window. So I'm getting used to this new mouse, banging stuff around. Oh man. Almost there, folks. Promise. Alright, we'll just hit one more of these. Good little warm-up episode, first.
Our once great cities have become unlivable, unsanitary nightmares, surrendered to the homeless, the drug-addicted, and the violent and dangerously deranged. We're making many suffer for the whims of a deeply unwell few, and they are unwell indeed. The homeless have no right to turn every park and sidewalk into a place for them to squat and do drugs. Americans should not have to step over piles of meals and waste as they walk down a street. Beautiful city, or at least once beautiful city.
All of our cities have completely gone down the hole, and it's a travesty. It's truly upsetting. Like, these used to be pinnacles of our empire, and now they're just crime-ridden, drug-ridden, Section 8 slum cities. It's gross, and it's all because it's soft on crime. Like, it's such an easy thing to fix, and no one has the gumption to do it, unfortunately.
Because they've changed so much over the last 10 years. Our first consideration should be the rights and safety of the hardworking, law-abiding citizens who make our society function. When I'm back in the White House, we will use every tool, lever, and authority to get the homeless off our streets. We want to take care of them, but they have to be off our streets. There is nothing compassionate about letting these individuals live in filth and squalor rather than getting them the help that they need. We need professionals to help them. For a small fraction of what we spend upon...
He's right. They do have to be treated with dignity. Asylums need to come back. Absolutely. There would be a lot of people occupying them, which is, it's really sad that so many people have severe mental illnesses, but they need to be treated and not supported in their delusions,
Ukraine, we could take care of every homeless veteran in America. Our veterans are being treated horribly. Likewise, with all of the money we will save by ending mass unskilled migration, we will have a huge dividend.
Where's that? You got all the H-1B visas and all your BS technicalities to make it sound good, when in reality you're still supporting the mass import of all these Chinese students and all these Indians. What are we doing? Like, it's so many backstabs in just the few videos that we've watched, and even the ones where I'm like, oh, that's BS, and it ended up occurring. It's not on a scale where it's making any difference. Like, maybe the regulations that they were saying earlier with the ICC, that they create sanctions. Obviously there's loopholes there because there's no felt effect, and we've seen that in many of the cases of self-defense that have become national instances, like all these young black teens running into garages and getting smoked for trying to steal a woman's car, and then she ends up having to go through a tough time and potentially not beating the case. So it's just, what are we doing here,
To address this crisis in our own country, under my strategy working with states, we will ban urban camping wherever possible. Violators of these bans will be arrested, but they will be given the option to accept treatment.
Yeah, start with all the mayors of these sanctuary cities and all the governors who support it.
And services, if they're willing to be rehabilitated. Many of them don't want that.
Who
We'll give them the option. We will then open up large parcels of inexpensive land, bring in doctors, psychiatrists, social workers, and drug rehab specialists, and create 10 cities where the homeless can be relocated and their problems identified.
It's a great idea.
We'll open up our cities again, make them livable and make them beautiful. For those who are just temporarily down on their luck, we will work to help them quickly reintegrate into a normal life. For those who have addictions, substance abuse, and common mental health problems.
Should have got it done before you lose the midterm elections, when you had, all this time to do so.
We will get them into treatment, and for those who are severely mentally ill and deeply disturbed, we will bring them back to mental institutions where they belong, with the goal of reintegrating them back into society once they are well enough to manage. It's a tough task, a very tough task. What's taken place on the streets, what's taken place with their taking so much drugs. But the fact is, we're going to try. This strategy will be far better and also far less expensive than spending vast sums of taxpayer money to house the homeless in luxury hotels without addressing their underlying...
Do you guys remember that? All the migrants coming in here getting pretty much everything you could need. They're getting travel, they're going wherever they got to go, they're getting ushered into the country, they're getting 5-star hotels, and they're getting food, they're getting SNAP and insurance, they're getting cell phones that are, prepaid. So crazy, man. It's like, it's not incompetency, it's complete intentionality to flood our country with all of these illegal immigrants. And to speak on that, divulging a little bit from this Trump video, it's the most frustrating thing to see all of these leftists who are screaming their head off about ICE being the Gestapo and how, evil and horrible it is that they're doing this to these innocent people. There are too many people here who do not belong here. The pendulum has swung. And if you don't get them out, we're going to keep feeling all of the negative ramifications that come with having a massive illegal and even legal immigrant population. Every single metric you can conceive is affected and affects us, American citizens, poorly. And anyone who is fighting for it otherwise is just completely brainwashed by megacorps who like their slave labor. And on the other side of that, you have the Republicans who are crying about how, it's too aggressive what ICE is doing. They don't like the way it's being done. And, they shouldn't have shot Renee Good and I'm blanking on the name of the other guy. This is what happens when you have a massive scale operation to get a massive amount of people out of the country. When you compound that aspect with completely understaffed ICE and National Guard, which they totally need to ramp up because the amount that they are currently using is not anywhere near enough to get the job done, and the numbers of deportations reflect that, which is only about 250K, which is less than Obama's first year. So when you compound that aspect of understaffing with completely uncrushed, violent leftist groups who are not just doing their peaceful protests, they are complete agitators. They are touching these cops. They're getting in their way. They're impeding. They're following them. They're blocking them. They're attacking them. When you let these people go uncrushed, they become emboldened. And it gets worse and worse and worse. And the people who don't have the stomach for that deserve to be conquered. And the Republicans who can't stomach it are soft. They're just soft. That's all that it is. And if you are crying about ICE on either side of the aisle, or you're, conflating it to the Gestapo and this is how it starts and oh my God, they're taking American citizens and all of this stuff. If you're an American citizen, don't try and run over federal officers. Don't kick their car and agitate and scream them and try and attack them and go to a protest knowing you're going to do that with a loaded firearm. As far as technicalities go, were those necessarily justifying situations to shoot? Renee Good, more so. The other guy, not as much. He had his firearm taken from him. But in these escalatory circumstances, things like this are going to occur, and these people who are becoming martyrs are as absurd of a martyr as George Floyd. Like, they are mentally ill. They're not all the way there, and they're not the right people to be martyrs because they're fighting against themselves. It's literally like the most batshit suicidal empathy, and it's a false empathy based on a false moral high horse, and it's just the most frustrating thing to watch on both sides of the aisle, just being completely irate on the left and unchecked, and the right being completely soft about it. Obviously, I think there's a lot more people like me than they like to lead on as far as, letting people connect on this aspect, because all of, tech and social media and media itself are all conglomerated and want to shape certain narratives. So we got to get them out. It's the easiest, like one of the main things that would resolve a lot of issues in our nation is getting all of these illegal immigrants out, almost all of the H-1B visas out, and reviewing every single anchor baby who was born here from people who were here illegally. There's other countries like in England, you can't just go over to England and have a baby and have it be English unless you're coming from Somalia, but other civil countries where you are going into these other nations, if you're just born there, you do not gain citizenship. And the reason why we had that even happen in the first place is because when the slaves were emancipated, we had the 14th Amendment, because we didn't know what to do with them, so we turned them into citizens. And obviously in modernity, that has been completely abused, where Maria comes over the border so she can have an American kid, and then all of the rest of the family can come here. And this is a reason why we are being completely outpaced by births. And it's occurring, it's irrefutable, it's a mathematical inevitability. And anyone who says otherwise, it's been an evolution of of saying, oh, you know, you're being crazy, that's not happening, or, oh, yeah, it's happening, but here's why it's a good thing. Oh, actually, it's a good thing it's happening because white people suck. And now it's, you know, yeah, you deserve this. So, you know what, it's okay to stand up and fight for what's yours, you know. And this country is ours. It has been, for heritage Americans, it has been 90% white for almost, 300 or 400 years until the 1960s. They built everything. Anyone saying otherwise does not comprehend that, you know, grunt labor does not equate to the building of skyscrapers and massive infrastructure and building these cities that were once great, once the Paris of the West, once Rome, and now we're a decrepit version of it. So it's a shame, and what Trump was supposed to be is not what we've gotten, and it's a major bummer because he had the potential to be great. He had this amazing story, and he just completely caved in to the Jewish interest groups that paid for his campaign to get reelected, because obviously he's a very pro-Zionist president, as has been very, you know, has very clearly been shown throughout the entirety of this administration in nearly every action. If Kamala, whatever, was trying to pull half the stuff that he is, there'd be a lot more outrage. But the MAGA following has certainly become more cultish because of the massive amount of attacks they've endured for so long by these leftist institutions that they are kind of blinded by not having the ability to discern what is actually occurring, because, you know, they've been under attack for so long that they're like, well, you know, there's so many instances in which we can prove that all these leftist attacks are debunkable. You know, all of the sound bites they take on Trump that, you know, 2 seconds later turn out to be false, or AOC crying behind a fence, you know, staging it about the kids in cages when Obama had the kids in cages and they were treated much better under the Trump admin, There's thousands of examples, literally. So there's a rant.
So many of these underlying issues and needs. This is how I will end the scourge of homelessness and make our cities clean and safe and beautiful once again. We will do it. We will bring back America. Thank you.
It's a great plan. You know, I'd love to have that be the case, but it's just not something that's occurring. And unfortunately, that's just...
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I guess we don't have enough seats today.
Sorry about that. That's just how it is. So, first show, wanted to give it a go. That's going to do it for me. Appreciate everyone tuning in. I think like 2 people came in and out. This is the People's Table with me, Jake Ryan. Yeah, I mean, you know, follow, set the alerts for the _Jake_Ryan on all your favorite platforms so you don't miss a show. We got merch going on. We donate 10% of the profit to vets. So if you're a vet in need, go ahead and apply. We have affiliate programs. If you're down on your luck, need some money, if you got some hustle in you. I wear it almost every day. Stress tested the clothing for a year. It's almost all cotton. So love all of it. It's fair priced, not cringy, patriotic gear that I devised. On top of this, I guess the last thing I want to leave you with, everything's at orions.shop.